is about a small, quiet little town in the panhandle of Texas that got sick and tired of the dope dealers, and they hired me and I stood up for them.
This is a story about a town that wanted to send a message to the black community.
I think the story is simply about a community doing its best to do what they believe is right.
On July 23, 1999, a drug sting operation conducted by a single police officer with a troubled history in law enforcement resulted in the arrest of over 10% of Tulia's African-American population. Tom Coleman, a deputy sheriff from Swisher County, claimed that 46 residents of Tulia had sold him drugs. Among those arrested, 40 were African-American, 3 were Mexican, and the remaining 3 were whites with biracial children or marital ties to the African-American community. Initially, the arrested individuals, all of whom were economically disadvantaged, were inclined to go to trial in an effort to prove their innocence. However, as guilty verdicts piled up, sentences ranging from 20 to 434 years were handed down. Faced with such severe sentences, more and more of the arrestees made the difficult decision to accept plea deals. Consequently, their sentences now range from 1 year of probation to 18 years in prison. In a sting operation that resulted in no money, drugs, or weapons being found, 40 members of Tulia's African-American community were arrested solely based on the testimony of Tom Coleman, an undercover narcotics agent. There was no additional evidence such as surveillance video or audio recordings to support the charges. Notably, no second officer was present during the drug deal. Coleman stood as the sole witness in these cases, and in most instances, his testimony served as the primary evidence. However, Coleman's reliability as a witness was questionable, as later evidence revealed his troubled history as a law enforcement officer in other Texas counties. Inconsistencies and implausible scenarios found in Coleman's incident reports raised serious doubts about the reliability of his investigation. Compelling evidence emerged, revealing instances where Coleman misidentified defendants and fabricated evidence. As a result, on April 9, 2002, the district attorney dismissed the charges against Tanya White, one of the Tulia sting arrestees. White's defense counsel presented a bank record proving that she had made a transaction at a bank in Oklahoma during the time when Coleman alleged she was selling him cocaine in Tulia, which was over 300 miles away. Similarly, another defendant, Billy Don Wafer, had employee timesheets that served as proof of his presence at work during the time when he was purportedly selling drugs to Coleman. These records contradicted Coleman's allegations. Another case dismissed by the district attorney was that of Yoel Bryant, as it came to light that Coleman's description of Bryant as a tall black man with bushy hair, wearing a white t-shirt and black jogging pants, did not align with Bryant's actual physical appearance. Bryant, in fact, stood at 5'6" and had been bald for a significant period of time. The district attorney deliberately withheld information regarding Coleman's background, and many of the arrestees did not receive effective legal representation, resulting in limited or no cross-examination of Coleman's testimony. In certain cases, the judge sealed Coleman's employment records and prohibited the introduction of background information during the trial. It wouldn't have taken much investigation to realize that Tom Coleman was not suitable for the job Sheriff Stewart had brought him to Tulia to perform. In his last 2 law enforcement positions, as a deputy sheriff in Cochran County from 1994 to 1996 and as a deputy in Pecos County from 1989 to 1994, Coleman's employment ended abruptly. On both occasions, he left town without any prior notice to his employers, leaving behind his patrol car parked at his residence. Additionally, it was discovered that Coleman had left behind a trail of unpaid bills amounting to thousands of dollars. Sheriff Kenneth Burke of Cochran County didn't hold back in expressing his thoughts about Coleman's departure. In a letter to the state agency responsible for licensing peace officers, Sheriff Burke made it clear that in his view, an officer should actually uphold the law. The accolades bestowed upon Coleman, juxtaposed with the concealed details of his past, painted a picture of a flawed system, one in which transparency and accountability were overshadowed by a desire for quick justice and a need to preserve reputations. Word of Coleman's background had circulated within Tulia's Black community. Tulia's Black population was not shocked by the revelations. Others were quick to express their lack of surprise. "Get a dirty man to do a dirty job," remarked Freddie Brookins Sr., whose son, like the majority of the defendants, found himself behind bars solely based on Coleman's testimony. According to Brookins and others, the prevailing sentiment suggests that the predominantly white Tulia community was inclined to believe Coleman, regardless of the dubious intricacies of the operation. This belief stems from a long-standing history of fear and mistrust towards the Black community, which has undeniably influenced numerous public policy decisions in the town.
This pointed 1996 letter in which Coleman's former boss wrote, "Mr. Coleman should not be in law enforcement." But remarkably, the jurors still believed Coleman. And when we asked jurors in another case who hadn't heard about Coleman's past, they said it wouldn't have made any difference to them either. Would you have wanted to know any more information that would reflect on his credibility, whether his propensity to tell the truth or not?
We weren't trying him.
And what somebody has done in the past doesn't mean they're not credible at the time that they're doing a different job.
Exploiting the existing fear within the community, Swisher County District Attorney Terry McEachern strategically capitalized on it during the first trial involving Joe Moore. McEachern depicted the 67-year-old Moore, a respected figure in the Black community, as a drug dealer who specifically targeted schoolchildren. With 2 prior felony convictions, including one for cocaine possession in 1990, Moore faced charges of delivering powdered cocaine to Coleman. Ultimately, Moore was handed a sentence of 90 years, convicted on 2 counts of delivering an 8-ball of powdered cocaine to Coleman. Despite McEachern's portrayal of Joe Moore as a significant drug dealer, if not the primary one in Tulia, Moore's humble living conditions in the heart of the Black neighborhood contradict claims of him being a kingpin. His dilapidated house, surrounded by a yard filled with collected junk for scrap-selling purposes, hardly reflects a prosperous lifestyle.
I didn't even know nothing about a kingpin. I don't even know how a kingpin live or nothing. I don't know nothing about that. But I know they live 30 times better than this. No, 100 times better than this.
Reverend Alan Bean and rancher Gary Gardner teamed up because they had concerns about the drug bust. They wondered how a small town of 5,000 people could have over 40 drug dealers and questioned who they were selling drugs to. The lack of evidence or proof didn't seem right to them.
Most of the white residents we spoke with supported the sheriff's decision to execute the raid. But the Tulia defendants found an unlikely ally in an unexpected place. A local wheat and cattle farmer named Gary Gardner has taken up their cause and taken on the white community.
I initially picked up on the raid on television, Channel 7, one morning, and they had images of black people being dragged across the courthouse lawn in their underwear and their hair uncombed like they weren't humans.
Gardner is an outspoken critic of the local sheriff's war on drugs.
In this county, when someone says drug dealer, they're talking about a person of black skin.
A plain-spoken man who uses the N-word freely when the camera isn't rolling, Gardner is at first blush an unlikely ally for the Tulia defendants. But after the arrests, he says something just didn't sit right.
I knew that we didn't have 46 drug dealers in Tulia.
Why not?
We only got 5,000 people. Who are you going to sell to? They can't be that many.
So Gardner sat through several of the trials, and he started digging.
I'm just an old dumb farmer, and all you got to do is sit down and go over the police reports, and it's there, black and white, and the evidence isn't there.
Being created an organization called Friends of Justice, and Gardner filed a legal document called a writ of habeas corpus for his friend Joe Moore. Others, including reporter Nate Blakesley and organizations like the NAACP, also started to question the validity of the drug bust. Amarillo criminal attorney Jeff Blackburn noticed the situation too. He took up the cases of the convicted residents of Tulia and started filing appeals on their behalf. During his investigation, Blackburn discovered that Coleman, the lawman involved, had a questionable past and might have been dishonest. Blackburn brought to light the troublesome cases that prosecutors had quietly dismissed and began building a case to free his clients. Coleman's rise in the law enforcement ranks was short-lived. He accepted more assignments, but his true nature as someone dishonest became apparent. Eventually, he was fired in Ellis County due to a sexual harassment claim. As Mr. Blackburn's briefs and filings caught the attention of appellate courts, positive changes started to unfold for the convicted residents of Tulia. Subsequently, Coleman faced indictment on perjury charges and went to trial. Governor Rick Perry pardoned 35 defendants in August 2003. As part of a settlement, taxpayers from 17 participating counties in the regional task force paid around $5.9 million. The defendants received approximately $4 million, while the remaining amount was paid to the attorneys. The cost of housing the incarcerated defendants was estimated at about $230,000 for Swisher County residents, leading to a 5.8% increase in county property taxes in 2000. Furthermore, in April 2003, the county agreed to pay $250,000 to the defendants to gain immunity from civil lawsuits. One of the individuals granted a pardon was Joe Moore. Joe had received over $250,000 in compensation for the wrongful conviction that led to his imprisonment. With the settlement, he decided to buy a used Ford Expedition and a small hog farm. Tom Coleman would face trial for perjury, and ultimately, he would be found guilty. However, he would not be sentenced to serve any time in prison. Instead, he would receive 10 years of probation, a significantly lighter punishment compared to the years of suffering endured by his victims. Despite the conviction, Coleman staunchly maintains that he told the truth about all the deals he made in Tulia and stands unwavering in his account. He attributes the backlash he faced to the fact that all the black individuals went to jail, believing he became the scapegoat. While he admits to not being without fault, he adamantly refuses to accept responsibility for actions he says he did not commit.
With them. If we go to the grocery stores with them, we're still the same scumbags. Nothing changed.
I lost my family, you know. I mean, 4 years. Who's gonna wait for you 4 years?
Speeding 2 miles over because you didn't hit a signal light. We need to search your car. Why you gotta search my car? Tulia Drug Bust. You got 7 delivery cases.
I forgive him.
Keep on pushing.
I forgive him, but I ain't gotta forget. Because it hurts every day.